Welcome to Amber Light, where we shine light into the darkness of those places of corruption and abuse, seeking justice for innocent victims, especially when they have been harmed by government agents. Today I have an old case to share. It's one that maybe you've heard of. It's from all the way back in December 28th of 2018. On that particular day, the stepdaughter of Glenn Rightsell had her 2007 Chevrolet Tahoe break down on State Road 231 in Indiana, between Lafayette, Indiana, and Crawfordsville, just south of the North Montgomery High School. At about 3:30 p.m. that day, Officer Daniel Organ of the Montgomery County Police stopped by the vehicle and tagged it as a disabled vehicle. At about 6:30 that evening, Glenn Rightsell stopped by the vehicle to begin repairs. Shortly after that, Officer Daniel Organ returned to the scene, where he arrived with no body camera, so there's no documentation about what was to happen next. He pulled up behind the disabled vehicle and approached the vehicle. As he walked up, he had his service weapon out already, but he was holding it, pointing it down to the ground. That'll come into bear here later. So he's got his gun in his hand. As he approaches the vehicle, the hood is up, and he can see through the crack of the hood that there's a man leaning down into the engine compartment working, and Officer Organ notices that this man is armed, that he has a firearm in the holster on his side. Officer Organ announces that he is the police, and according to his testimony, Glenn Rightsell reaches for his gun, and Officer Organ shoots him. Keep in mind, there's no body camera, so it is solely on the testimony of Police Officer Organ. Glenn Rightsell later on died at a hospital. There was an investigation by the police, and Officer Organ was found not guilty, completely innocent, due to self-defense. We're going to get into this. Trooper Daniel Organ had already become pretty infamous in the Crawfordsville, Indiana area, Montgomery County, Indiana area. Here is a news report from WTHR Channel 13.
Tonight at 5 o'clock. Last night, you may remember, we told you about the criminal background of the man who was shot and killed by a state trooper last Friday in Montgomery County.
Well, tonight, many are speaking up, coming and sharing their concerns about why they were pulled over and how they say they were treated by State Trooper Daniel Organ. So today, Rich and I went back to Crawfordsville to hear their stories of reported harassment.
Trooper Daniel Organ has only been on patrol with the Indiana State Police for a little over a year. And yet he's already earned a bad reputation with several people he's pulled over along US 231 in Montgomery County. Kayla Hernandez was driving home with her 3 children on the night of November 3rd when Trooper Organ pulled her over. She says he made her get out of her SUV and handcuffed her behind the vehicle for being a habitual traffic offender, all in front of her children.
They were outside the vehicle, had the doors open. There were semis and trucks going by here, vehicles going by, flying by, had the doors open, screaming and yelling for mommy.
Hernandez had a conditional driver's license, but says Organ refused to let her get it out of the console. Organ arrested Hernandez. She spent 3 days in jail, but all charges and tickets were dropped.
So I was wrongfully arrested. Spent 3 days in jail, missed 2 days of work because of the situation.
For no reason?
For no reason. Being harassed.
Erica Zwick started the Facebook page Justice Against Organ after learning the trooper shot and killed Glenn Rightsell during a traffic stop last Friday. The page has many posts about people allegedly harassed, followed home, and treated rudely like she says she was during a November 11th traffic stop.
He looked at my ID and started questioning me about, what kind of drugs was I on? When's the last time I smoked marijuana? When's the last time I've done methamphetamines or heroin? And I answered him, never, never, and never.
All before Zwick was told she was pulled over for not signaling a lane change soon enough. She was given a warning ticket.
Finally coming out about what this officer is doing and how he's acting. And personally, I think there's something off about the incident that happened on 231. All the stories, all the stories changing. There's just something not right there.
Trooper Organ has no disciplinary record and is on administrative leave. Visitation for Glenn Rightsell is tonight, with the funeral tomorrow in Lafayette. In Crawfordsville, I'm Rich Knight, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
Now, email requests to speak to Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter were not returned.
Trooper Oregon's infamy was well known in the Crawfordsville, Indiana area. I just did kind of a quick search here and came up with this. According to available information, community complaints against Indiana State Trooper Daniel Oregon primarily centered around allegations of excessive force, including unnecessarily threatening individuals with lethal force, pointing his firearm at them without justification, approaching vehicles with his gun drawn during routine stops, and needlessly detaining people. These complaints were reportedly filed before the shooting of Glenn Rightsell. So the police were very aware that this man was a loose cannon. As I said earlier, remember? When he came walking up to this disabled vehicle that Glenn Rightsell was working on, he already had his gun in hand. Are police officers really trained that way? I can't imagine that's the case. To have a gun in your hand already when you're approaching innocent people, and it sounds like this was not the first time. Remember, a key point that I think I mentioned earlier is the fact that Trooper Oregon did not have a body camera on. Now, I don't know if that's because he didn't have a body camera or if he just simply didn't turn it on. It's obvious that at this time, back in 2018, the police did have body cameras. This was released, around that time frame, a video from WLFI TV 18 News in Lafayette, Indiana, where body cam footage was released from fatal shooting. Now, it's important to note this was not Trooper Oregon's body camera, but rather the supporting police officers that came onto the scene. This video also interviews Gloria Rightsell, Glenn Rightsell's wife, and she has a lot to say.
Body camera footage from a Crawfordsville police officer shows the moments right after Glenn Rightsell was shot by an Indiana State Police trooper.
On Monday, it was announced the Rightsell's widow, Gloria, sued the trooper who shot Rightsell, Indiana State Police, and several other entities. She said she didn't want to take these actions, but felt she had no other choice.
It's like a bad dream. You can't wake up. It's like, this can't be happening.
Gloria Rightsell and her husband Glenn were together for 21 years. But on December 28th of last year, Gloria and her family's world came crashing down.
It was an innocent man. He was working on my daughter's car. He was doing nothing more. He was, from what I understand, he was shocked that the cop came up and shot him.
Can you hear my voice? Both your hands in the air. Crawl this way.
This body camera footage from a Crawfordsville police officer shows the moments after Glenn was shot by Indiana State Police Trooper Daniel Oregon. Oregon shot Rightsell after he said it looked as though Rightsell was reaching for his gun after Oregon asked him if he needed any help.
Just because they're the police don't mean that they can just shoot somebody because they're carrying a gun.
In the body camera footage, police can be heard telling Rightsell to crawl towards them after he'd been shot. And later in the video, he is told to watch where he's swinging his mouth.
Watch where you're swinging your mouth, all right?
There's no reason to treat a man after he's been shot the way that Glenn was treated. He was treated like a dog.
Gloria says she can't bring herself to watch the video, but she wants justice for Glenn, who she says was innocent of any wrongdoing, especially since he was legally carrying a firearm.
There's got to be some kind of repercussion, you know. They basically got by with murder.
The Montgomery County prosecutor ruled back in March that Organ would face no criminal charges since Organ was in fear of his life, a ruling Gloria wasn't surprised to see come down.
State police investigated themselves. That shouldn't be. I wasn't shocked.
The lawsuit filed by Gloria is asking for a jury trial with unspecified damages. Now, we did reach out to Indiana State Police, and they said they have no comment on the suit at this time.
Gloria Rightsell did, in fact, sue. What I'm sharing here is, the actual documents. There was a lot of activity around her lawsuit. Originally, on October 28th, 2020, it was determined that she could only sue Trooper Organ. There was a lot of back and forth over the years. This took a long time. But finally, on November 30th, 2021, there was a resolution. Here I'm sharing the order to compromise and settle. Compromise and settle. See that? The state compromised with her and settled with her. I'll just read portions of this here. You can find this. This is public record here. So, comes now, Gloria Rightsell is the duly appointed and qualified personal representative of the estate of Glenn Rightsell, deceased, for the purpose of collecting damages for civil rights violations resulting in the injuries and death of Glenn Rightsell. And it's got some legal jargon here. But notice the language there. Damages, civil rights violations. I'll go on here. Here's the order. Number 1, the compromise offer in the sum of $675,000 in full and final settlement of the civil rights violations of Glenn Rightsell made by the named defendants should be accepted by the personal representative, and she is hereby authorized to accept the same. You see that? $675,000. The named defendants in this case are the police, including Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter. You get that? Their own investigation said, nope, nothing to look at here, no wrongdoing. Trooper Organ acted in self-defense, but yet now here they are settling. As far as I can tell, this was never in the mainstream media. I never saw this published anywhere. I looked, even researched for it, and I don't see it. Maybe it has been, but I missed it. This seems to me to have been done under the table. It's hush money. Now, I'm not saying that the family, didn't deserve, to be compensated. I do believe they certainly deserved probably more. But $675,000 was paid. And where does that money come from? You'll notice here at point 2, upon payment by the state of Indiana and their insurer. So it's both the insurance company and the state. Yep, that's tax money. That's on the back of the citizens of the state of Indiana, when it really should have been on the back of the police, because they acted inappropriately, but they never owned it. You see, that's the problem here in Indiana. Again and again and again, we see corruption at very high levels. They cover themselves. You'll note here too, on point number 2, that after this payment, I'm going to read this next line. I'll highlight it down here. That Gloria Rightsell is hereby authorized and directed to release and discharge Daniel Organ, We'll slide down a little bit. Douglas Carter, superintendent of the Indiana State Police, and then some other officers here too. To release them from any and all further liability on account of the violation of Glenn Rightsell's civil rights, resulting in injuries and death. You see that? And she is directed to deliver Daniel Organ, Doug Carter, and all of these people, the insurer also, full and fine release. So let them go. They're off the hook. Maybe finally here. Number 4. Said personal representative, Gloria Rightsell, is also authorized upon such payment to dismiss the lawsuit. So there it is. There's more money here yet, too. $216,000 that she has to now pay to her attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. But she was paid. I'll go back up to the top here. Rightly so, I think. Rightly so. It is therefore ordered, adjudged, and decreed by the court that here's the settlement. $675,000. So I'm going to wrap this up. It's really a frustrating case, even though it is an older one. It's one that I just wanted to do a video on because, once again, it's exactly the type of content that I want to expose on this channel. That there is a real problem here in the state of Indiana. Glenn Rightsell was carrying a gun for sure, but he was carrying it legally. He had a criminal record. I didn't really get into that, but not major. He wasn't a major criminal. He had some problems, but nothing major. He's working on his stepdaughter's car on the side of a road. This officer, Trooper Organ, shows up, who is a year into the job. He's trigger happy. Lots of complaints from citizens about how aggressive he was and how he'd have a gun in his hand when he would walk up to a car, which that seems to me, to be against probably police policy here. When do you draw a firearm? When you perceive a threat, right? That's logical. The state police, the police in Indiana, conducted an investigation, found no wrongdoing, of course. He shot Glenn Rightsell, is an act of self-defense. No body camera evidence. It's only on the testimony of the officer. When there were body cameras, obviously, as body camera evidence later was shown to be there. And guess what? One final point to wrap up. I looked it up. Trooper Daniel Organ, as of 2025, is an Indiana State Police trooper in the town of Putnamville, Indiana. No consequences, even though his actions cost the taxpayers and the state police's insurer $675,000. We have to do better. Hey, thank you for watching. If you get a chance, please like, comment, subscribe to this video, and keep that porch light on for justice for innocent victims.